All right, class, let's get started with our second lecture, Spheres of Physical Activity Experience. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and we will look at the material. All right, so with this lecture, we have 7 different spheres that we'll discuss. And what it basically is how we classify the physical activity that we do every day, and classify those experiences as well as kind of discuss and elaborate the significance or importance of them. So first, our objectives is we're just understanding more about the universe of physical activity. We're going to spark our thinking about how our different physical activities fit into these different spheres, and then talk a little bit about benefits and limitations of the physical activity that we do. All right, so do you remember this little satellite that we looked at in the last lecture? We had professional experience, scholarship of physical activity, and then physical activity experience itself. Well, from physical activity experience, we're going to branch into these 7 different spheres. So this is what we're going to look at, and we're going to fit our physical activity into each of these little, I guess, what are they, pies, in this kind of pie chart, okay? All right, first starting with self-sufficiency. So if we were to define what self-sufficiency is, it's being independent and being self-sufficient, which means you're able to do your everyday activities without having a limitation or needing help to perform them. First, we have activities of daily living. Our ADLs, this is everything that we do. These are things we do every day that a normal, healthy person should be able to perform by themselves without help. If we need help doing these, usually we are not self-sufficient. If we can't bathe, dress, eat, walk by ourselves, we are lacking in self-sufficiency, which usually happens with old age and disability or some sort of illness, disease. Then we have instrumental activities of daily living, more strenuous. This could be cleaning the house. This could be doing some meal prepping, like when you're cooking dinner. This could be going shopping for groceries or clothes, whatever. We still have to do these things every day, usually. And maybe not, yeah, probably about every day. But we should still be able to do them on our own. Sometimes people have other individuals who will perform these for them. And then we have home maintenance, which again, some people have somebody to come and do the housework, the gardening, any repair work. But these are these home maintenance activities that, again, is part of being self-sufficient, but you don't have to have someone or do these yourself. You can hire someone, obviously. So there's a challenge though, is when we have limitations in performing the ADLs and the IADLs, that requires people to depend on others. This is a problem. Question is, how do we prevent or slow the decline in our physical function due to age? And what we have to do is introduce exercise. And as we keep exercising with age, as we're getting older, this can help to maintain our self-sufficiency, being more dependent or more independent and not have to rely on others. But this is a huge healthcare problem where lots of older adults are being put in institutions and facilities, which is fine. They need it. But it is a financial burden and it can become tiresome when this occurs long term. That's why starting an exercise program early for these middle-aged and older adults can help to prevent or slow the decline in age function due to aging. All right, next is a sphere of self-expression. We just have this one slide. We're going to consider how do we express ourselves through physical activity? And then I want you to start thinking about some examples of physical activity through self-expression. And so when we think about expressing ourselves through movement, some examples like this one picture here is talking with our hands. If you had me in like a real in-person lecture, I talk with my hands, I move my body, I express myself through body language and how I talk. And so that is an example. So expressing yourself through talking with your hands, making motions with your body. Another example is dancing. So, like an end zone dance after you score a touchdown. And so, those are great examples. Any type of dance. Someone in my previous classes in person would say, like posing in the mirror, flexing in the mirror shows like your expression or show kind of displays your like is a way of self-expression by showing your confidence and being proud of yourself for achieving a certain muscle mass by flexing, posing in the mirror. And then ones that I relate to the most would be my toddlers throwing tantrums, throwing their bodies on the ground because they're upset about something. And so that's a self-expression in the form of physical activity. They're throwing their body around and they're very upset. Then it's okay. And so yeah, so those are just some examples about how we express ourselves through physical activity. You can think of some others and jot those down if they would fall into this category. Next is the sphere of work. So some questions I have for you here is, well, before the questions is understand that work is an integral part of our life and physical activity is usually part of work. And so we're doing some sort of motions, moving our body in some sort of way when we are working. And our work usually produces a good or service. But what comes with that is, like I said, motion, movement. For me, as a lecturer, I walk back and forth across a classroom. I talk, I stand, I move my body. So for me, the physical activity I do in my work is very minimal. But it is movement. I am moving constantly as I lecture. So I want you to think about the jobs that you've had and think about what kind of physical activity you did, how intense was it, and was your health impacted at all from that type of work that you did? And so this next slide here gives you kind of some questions to answer or kind of some categories to classify your work in. This is your discussion post for this week. This is one part of your discussion post. And so this topic right here about your physical activity regarding your work is your discussion board post. Okay, so you can read that discussion board post and go to these two slides. Okay, great. Pen. Continuing with the sphere of work. So two things we have right here are specialists that help to make our work better. If you've ever heard of an ergonomist or a human factors engineer, they help to make our workspaces more effective. So they can make our workspace more effective to help posture, to help if we have to sit at a desk and type all day, how our body should be aligned to our computer and the desk and the floor, chair. Others could be like assembly line workers. Somebody comes in and helps to assess how the assembly line is going, teach them how to lift certain products, how to make products, move them, whatever they're doing. But these engineers, these ergonomists, help to make us more efficient and productive in our work and safe. They help to do it safely to reduce injury risk. Question I have here is what, as technology continues to shape the character of work, what happens to physical jobs? We've already started seeing this, and it's the loss of physical jobs being replaced by technology, machines, robots, and now AI. And so a big deal is we see work, like actual physical jobs being reduced and people let go because technology is advancing. This YouTube video I have down here at the bottom is a really amazing YouTube video that shows you the history of how technology has replaced physical jobs. So some challenges that we see as a kinesiologist. There's always risk in the workplace. This could be anything due to lack of physical activity due to the technological advances, injuries that we see, psychological stress relating to cardiovascular disease. We also see down here at the bottom is what can we do to make our work performance better. And you can kind of read those 3 bullet points there and just kind of understand like what can be done to be more effective and safe as we're working. Next is the sphere of education. So we know that physical education is important to healthcare professionals. Our goal a lot of the times is we're trying to change people's physical activity behaviors. Most people are sedentary or very little activity is done in their day-to-day life. What we want to do is change that. And so how can educators change physical activity behavior starting in our early education years. What we want to think about is making it fun for younger people, making it fun, engaging, and then for some older individuals, making it challenging, where we're pushing them, we're challenging them to explore different outlets, challenging them to figure out different types of exercise that they want to engage in, maybe adding competitions. We're trying to cater to each kind of individual age group and make it fun and exciting for them to start. And if they can start young, then usually it carries out through the rest of their life. We know poor fitness and sedentary levels are out there, especially in new generations. Our new generations that are up and coming, a lot of screen time. And we know that's phones, tablets, and there's not a lot of physical activity when you're watching a screen. And so this is where poor health comes in, and this is where health educators are trying to change that outcome. We're trying to reduce screen time and we're trying to get people more active. What do we want to do? Like, what's our goal? Competence and confidence. Competence, we know, is being able to do something, and confidence is being able to do it well and that you are proud of your success in that one skill or activity. What we also want to do is competence and confidence in lifetime sport skills. These are things that we can do for the rest of our lives. Anything from golfing, playing tennis, walking, cycling, swimming, hiking, pickleball. There's other, easy pickup sports that can be played throughout the rest of our lives. And that's what we want to do to ensure that we stay fit and healthy from early childhood all the way up to older adult age. Next is the sphere of leisure. So some terms here that we've actually gone over before is free time versus leisure time. And so when we think of free time, this is the time where we have no work, we have no school, we can do whatever we want. Sometimes we actually choose to do chores, or we choose to do a leisure activity. So free time basically means you've got time. What do you choose to do in that time is up to you. Like we said, sometimes people can do chores, laundry, they can go do the necessary errands that they have to run, or they can actually do an activity where they find deep satisfaction. That's what leisure is, like we talked about from the last lecture, is doing something you really, really love to do. So I want you to think about, what is that leisure activity for you? Sports watching, for some people, is very leisurely. They can sit on the couch and watch the sports games, and they can be so engrossed in the game that they kind of lose whatever else is going on. But my question is, do you think sports watching keeps people from participating in their own physical activity? This is an argument where some people say, like, yes, obviously they're sitting and watching a football game for 4 hours on the couch and they're not being active. Or some people say, no, it inspires them to be like these athletes and want to live an active lifestyle to where they're as fit and healthy and able to perform that sport. So again, it could be inspiring for some and then maybe not for others, but a good question to ask yourself. Next, looking at the sphere of health. We know there is a dose-response relationship between physical activity and health. And so the more physical activity you do, usually the better your health is. But if we look at this graph, there is like a slight decline in health as we get to the higher intensity physical activity levels. We know that low physical activity really is an issue for our nation. High healthcare costs, we see more diseases, and we have to treat these diseases. And so if we can actually get people to be more physically active, we can probably see lower doctor's visits, lower healthcare cost, looking at less of these surgeries, types of procedures that have to be done to reverse the sedentary effects. And so if we can get people active, that can really improve kind of overall outcomes when looking at nationwide healthcare. We look here at this physical active living, activity for health, exercise for fitness, and training for a sport. What we see is the benefits outweigh the risk. Even at the training for sport level, when injury risk increase, we still see benefits are always outweighing the risk of doing physical activity. And so there's that dose response relationship. We're always going to see improvements in health. There are some detriments though. And like I said earlier, We're just going to touch on two detriments that we see in sports, and that's over-exercising, and then over-exercise usually leads to some sort of injury. I want you to think about some of the negative examples that you have experienced or heard about when engaging in too much exercise. So exercising every day, long hours, pushing yourself too hard, becoming overtrained, and then possibly experiencing injuries. This graph down here shows injuries in 2013 of kids 18 or younger, I think, or, adolescents, ER visits from a sport. And we see football, basketball, and then soccer up there pretty high with these different injuries. So we know injuries are common. They cannot be prevented. But again, usually the health benefits that come from sports usually outweigh those negative outcomes. Last sphere is the sphere of competition. With our sphere of competition, we know that it's natural. Competition is natural to most humans. Some people are more competitive than others in games or just kind of everyday things, sports. We know that competition is positive or negative. It can make you play better. It can make you more excited about the sport, but then it can also be negative in a sense where you have animosity towards a player. You have a lot of maybe strong feelings towards the sport that you're playing. But most of the time, positive or negative, performance increases. Usually we see an improvement in performance with a competitive atmosphere or competitive environment. There's different types of competition. Side by side would be like track or golf, where you're competing against somebody, but you're side by side, like there's no contact and you're not face to face. Face to face non-contact would be anything from like volleyball to tennis, where we're face to face playing competition, but you're not contact. Face to face contact, football, soccer, basketball. And then impersonal is that battle within yourself where you're competing against like your best time, your best performance. And so again, just think about your last competitive experience that you had and how did it affect you? And did your performance increase during that competitive period? All right, so that's the end of lecture 2, Spheres of Physical Activity Experience. And we'll pick back up in our lecture 3. Okay, bye.